You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the network where we go beyond our traditional world of Apple and Tesla and index options and all that fun stuff and explore what's going on the crypto side of the fence. Going to talk the volatility, the volume, the open interest, the SKEW, all that good stuff, and a whole bunch more. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the aforementioned network, reminding all of you out there, if you like what you hear, this show, anything else we do on the network throughout the week, keep rating and reviewing. It really does help the legion of new participants in these markets discover our content. Of course, keep those questions and comments coming, too. We do love to hear from all of you guys and gals out there. Let's see who we're hearing from on the old program today. Without further ado, it's time to roll out the Crypto Hot Seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the program where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto, derivatives, and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. Next up on the program, an old friend of the network, Mr. KAPIL RATHI, now the co-founder and CEO over there at CrossStower Crypto Exchange. KAPIL, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown program.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me here.
Long time no talk, sir. Let's get right into it. Last time you were on the show was back in November of last year. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. And yet, oh, what a year 2021 has been, particularly for the lens of this program for the crypto markets. We've seen, Bitcoin, ETH, all the major crypto assets, Dogecoin, you name it, all of them exploding to new record highs or pretty much close to them, capturing a ton of mind share, generating a ton of volume out there across all of the major venues. So I have to imagine, KAPIL, since the last time you and I chatted, you guys over there at CrossStower have been pretty busy. So let's start there. Catch us up. What have the last few months and what has this crazy 2021 been like for you and the team over there at CrossStower, sir?
Crazy is probably an understatement. It's funny how COVID has changed everyone's life. And as far as crypto as an industry go, I think We all have seen so much adoption from the institution side. It is becoming a mainstream asset class. If there is any industry where you really want to see innovation coming in, whether it's coming out of pandemic or people sitting in their home just trading different things, but you're absolutely right. Things have been absolutely busy for good. The industry is growing at an exponential pace. There's never a dull time in this industry.
So walk us through it a little bit. Obviously, Bitcoin and pretty much every other major crypto asset has exploded, particularly since the start of this year. What have these last few months been like for you guys over there?
A lot going on at CrossTower. So for some of your listeners who probably are not familiar, or the new listeners who are joining, quick introduction about CrossTower. We are a crypto investment and trading platform. We operate 2 different business lines. We run 2 exchanges, exchange regulated out of US and an exchange regulated out of Bermuda. And we recently actually started or kind of went into a new business line called Crypto Capital Market. We hired a very senior executive from Citadel and ex-Goldman, Mr. Greg Bunn, who's establishing our capital market business line, where we are providing investment products and financing services to large hedge funds, pension funds, endowments, family offices. We have a Bitcoin fund where some of these large investors who don't necessarily want to buy Bitcoin or any other crypto by themselves, they can actually use our fund to gain exposure to this asset class. We provide structured product services for hedge funds to create custom risk profile, and then we provide borrowing and lending services for their financing need. So CrossTower actually has, since I spoke last time, has grown dramatically. We are hiring. If any of your listeners are looking to jump into crypto space or have already spent time, I do recommend them to check out our website. We're growing. We are growing really fast.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, sir. A lot of our listeners may be familiar with a lot of the more retail-oriented crypto exchanges. That's not your market, as you kind of laid it out there, Kapil, going for more of an institutional audience out there. That's been one of our drum beats on this program since we launched it over 100 episodes ago now, which seems crazy to say out loud, but it has been over a couple of years. Now we've seen a lot of evolution in that institutional space over the course of the past couple of years, particularly in the last few months, as we've seen this reawakening, I suppose you can call it, of the institutional audience. Has that been your takeaway as well, Kapil? The institutions are back to play and indeed back to stay in crypto these days, sir?
Yes, they definitely have. And just to clarify, we're not necessarily staying focused on the institution side. We do actually, on our exchange side, have quite a few number of retail customers. It's primarily the active traders, more like the advanced traders who tend to pivot from traditional or some other big exchanges, such as COINBASE, Kraken, who are more geared towards mom and pop type of exchanges. Our exchanges has advanced trading tools, stability, integrity, technology that in my past life I have helped build at my days at ISC, BATS, and CBOE. So there is a good amount of retail customer that's trading on our exchange, and we do want to keep serving and bring some of these sophisticated technology tools to active traders. Moving on to institution side, absolutely. 2020 has been everything about institution. You name it, hedge funds, pension funds, family offices, endowments, large corporate treasuries, big retail providers, PayPal, Square, everyone, Visa, everyone is now coming into crypto. So if you're not in crypto, you're probably living in a cave. So I think this is a real asset class now. There is just there's a lot of innovation going on. I think there's no looking back from here.
And let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about some of the numbers you guys are seeing, because obviously, like we said, it's been just an explosion across the board from a crypto volume perspective. What kind of numbers you guys been putting up on CrossTower lately here in this mad year of 2021, Kapil?
Yeah, we launched in June. Our MVP came out, and then we started opening our platform to bigger set of customers late in October, November. Since then, we're growing about 60% month over month, adding customers. We have about 50 plus institutional customers on our platform now, and a pretty sizable number of retail customers. On a typical day, we're trading somewhere between $8 to $10 million a day on notional basis. It's a journey, it's a marathon, and we just got our license out of Bermuda, so now we are opening up our business to global customers and adding more and more products. Pretty soon, we will actually be launching futures on crypto out of our Bermuda exchange. So both on the product side, jurisdiction side, as well as adding new coins as they come in. So lot happening.
Well, futures, we like to hear that, Kapil, because you know what follows after that is the options, right? Then we'll have you on a year or two down the road, Kapil. We'll be talking about going back to your old days in the options exchange, just talking about all the options volume you guys are putting up out there in the near future. But, you know, one of the interesting things we've been talking about a lot of late with a lot of the different exchanges that have been coming on the show in the last few months is just the challenge in the crypto space to get out there and really provide liquidity. That's, of course, the end of the day, the core function of any exchange. I don't care what asset class you're playing in. You have to be that source of liquidity for the marketplace. How challenging is it for you guys over there at CrossTower to be able to source this liquidity? And what kind of steps are you guys doing to try to deepen that pool over there, Kapil?
Yeah, so I think it's funny. I talked to a lot of my old friends in Chicago and New York from the options trading world, and everyone kind of sees how different the exchanges in crypto as compared to some other asset classes are. Liquidity is a big challenge. Simultaneously, there are some obvious issues that the industry is still suffering with. The stability is a pretty big part. There are days when Bitcoin moves 5-10%. Top 2, top 3 exchanges won't be available for next 3-4 hours. You don't see that in traditional market, and that's where companies like CrossTower, who obviously my background for your listeners is about 20 plus years of building options exchanges and some of the really successful options exchanges. I have brought that kind of similar discipline at CrossTower. Knock on the wood, since launch, we had zero downtime. So with that technology and sort of risk-based approach gives confidence to our market makers. We have a lot of our traditional old friends from my option days as market makers on our platform who are confident in providing deep liquidity. So on a typical day, CrossTower liquidity pool actually looks very similar to some of the top exchanges like Kraken and Gemini. We actually building an exchange. You build a robust technology, robust risk platform, and give confidence to market makers. I think getting liquidity sort of is a natural result of that. So I'm really happy that from a book quality perspective, our book is looking really, really healthy.
You know, staying on the exchange front for a second, obviously a lot of eyes are on the crypto exchange area right now because Coinbase, one of the big dogs out there in the space, going public very soon. It has 56 million users they're talking about there, and they're talking about a valuation somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 100 billion. Just to put it in perspective, listeners, New York Stock Exchange, about 65 billion, NASDAQ, about 25 billion when it comes to market cap. So Coinbase getting a pretty lofty valuation. Obviously, this is your neck of the woods here, Kapil. This is where you live on the crypto exchange front. You know, for a long time, when we first started this show, it seems like we were just inundated with new participants in that space, new entrants in that crypto exchange space. Everyone wanted to be the NYSE or CME of the crypto world. It seems like we saw a little bit of a consolidation in that space. I'm curious for you, what are your thoughts on the evolution of the crypto exchange front, in particular in light of this upcoming enormous IPO? It's going to get a lot of attention. A lot of retail investors are going to be diving into this exchange now as well, just as an investor. You think this is going to add new fuel to the fire, bring new crypto exchanges to the front? What are your thoughts on the impact of this enormous event here in the crypto exchange world, Kapil?
So first of all, I really want to congratulate Coinbase team. Brian Armstrong and team have done an amazing job in bringing crypto to masses. I think they make it very easy for investors, or at least the retail investors. And the growth of this asset class is reflected in this IPO. Where does this industry go from here? I think having a public company listing crypto makes it a sort of like a common topic for Main Street. Now, everyone is recognizing what is Bitcoin, what is crypto, what's blockchain. It's not a foreign word anymore. So overall, I think this is going to be very healthy for the digital asset as an industry. As far as will there be more exchanges coming in? I think building an exchange, and kind of coming from my personal experience, is not an easy task. Of course, building a traditional exchange was never an easy task, but building a crypto exchange is actually probably much more harder, given the regulation in this space is still sort of bifurcated. You still have to work with individual states, government, different agencies in government. The exchange itself does a lot more than what a traditional exchange would do. You deal with the retail traders directly, you deal with institutional customers. Sometimes a lot of exchanges also are managing customer assets, so they custody customer assets. You don't hear that in the traditional asset classes. We are responsible for clearing and settlement. We are responsible for KYC, AML. So launching a new exchange in crypto is a pretty uphill battle. And that's why you probably haven't seen a lot of new exchanges coming in last couple of years, because they may have tried it, but they're failing. So I'm really fortunate that I believe CrossTower has passed through that stage. We're growing. Industry has recognized us as a viable, not only just an alternate, but viable solution to the problems that some other exchanges haven't really solved. Some of the one that I mentioned about resiliency and integrity and liquidity. So I think the industry is maturing. People like us are helping grow. We're bringing a lot of experience. We're building a team. You may see, probably you were saying how everybody wanted to be CME and NYSE. I think the wind is probably going to turn. There won't be a day. I won't be surprised if CME and NYSE would want to become Coinbase at some point. So not that I had any information, but I can see some traditional exchanges now jumping into crypto, given how Coinbase has demonstrated that there is a lot of growth in this area.
I like that. CME and NASDAQ. They want to grow up to be Coinbase someday, Carol. Maybe it's certainly on the
between $20 billion and $100 billion market valuation.
Yeah, that's true. I can certainly see why maybe they might want to be leaning that way. But, you mentioned something that's always interested me about the exchange side of the crypto space, is that you guys in the crypto exchange world have to do a lot more than a traditional exchange. CME isn't out there, like you said, getting customers. They're not really the front end portal. They're not really dealing with customer acquisition. Those are the jobs of the traditional broker in most of the actual financial markets most people deal with. But the crypto world has really kind of blurred those lines between what a broker is and what an exchange is. I mean, Coinbase is really a broker, first and foremost. And then they also operate as a liquidity pool as well, which is kind of interesting, a bit of a blurring of the lines. Do you ever think, Kapil, maybe when the regulatory scene firms up a little bit, we'll see a bit more of a divorcing of these functions and getting back to the more traditional lines of what an exchange does and what a broker does in the crypto world? Or is this kind of just going to be this way forever? It's just the Wild West, and that's kind of how it shook out.
No one really knows in crypto where we're going to end. We all know the direction we are going to. What the destination is, it's very hard to predict. I mean, and this industry moves rapidly, really rapidly fast. Just look at our own case. I think when we started reaching out to, or actually other way, when we launched CrossTower, we started getting a lot of inbound from our network at hedge funds and buy side and traditional asset manager world. And they started asking not only just execution services, which is what typically exchanges provide. They were also asking for, so who's my prime broker for this? Where I can go lend against my assets? Is there someone who can provide me access to multiple markets? How do I manage my risk? Is there cross-margining? Do you do portfolio margining? Who provides all these services in traditional asset classes? You have brokers, you have banks, you have intermediaries, sell-side entities. That entire infrastructure is almost non-existent in crypto. Because JP Morgan, Goldman, Morgan, they are still thinking. They are still sitting on the sideline. They may be talking about coming in crypto, but the buy side is not serviced by these prime brokers the way they are serviced in other asset classes. So we, as an exchange, have now a responsibility. We're seeing a demand. We know the customer want to trade, but that entire intermediate chain is missing. So we, as an exchange, are taking it upon ourselves. And that's why we hired Greg Bunn from Citadel to help us build that infrastructure. It is a big task, but the problem needs to be solved. The entire infrastructure needs to be built. And that's what exchanges are doing. Coinbase has built that infrastructure for retail customers. We are building that infrastructure for institution customers so they can trade with the same type of leverage, same type of margin, same type of risk management that they trade in other asset classes. So exchanges will end up in taking more and more role. I think it's too early that we're going to be stopped from doing it because there is a demand in the market and we are actually servicing that demand. So we're kind of helping grow that industry by providing these additional services that exchanges have never provided.
Someone has to jump into that void. Why not CrossTower? All right, Kapil. But, you've always been, for years now, you've always been kind of one of my go-to guys to talk about regulation, whether it was back in the days of SIBO and the options exchanges or now on the ever-evolving world of crypto regulation. You mentioned your domicile now. You have exchanges out there in Bermuda. I don't think that's lost on anyone why you're setting up venues in those types of areas because the crypto regulatory scene here in the U.S. still a little bit fluid. We had an interesting poll not too long ago with our audience. We asked them, do you think we'll see a crypto ETF, or I should say really a Bitcoin ETF approved in 2021 by the SEC and indeed launched? And our audience was exceedingly optimistic. 2/3, about 66% came in and said, yes, they think we'll see a Bitcoin ETF launched before the end of this year. I'm not sure if I'm as optimistic as our audience, but you're much closer to the fire than I am on the regulatory front there, Kapil. What are your thoughts on the evolving regulatory scene in the U.S.? And do you agree with our audience? I think we'll see a Bitcoin ETF sooner rather than later, sir.
I think I'm getting really optimistic now, especially in Q1 of 2020, what we have seen in this asset class. We had ETFs approved by Canada, Brazil, and Bermuda, and there are ETFs that are currently trading in some of the European exchanges. What that has done is there is a lot of inflow. The assets under management on these ETFs have grown dramatically. Like one of the popular ETF listed on Toronto-based exchange, Purpose Bitcoin has roughly $1 billion in assets since February launch. Within less than 2 months, they have grown from $0 to $1 billion. What does that tell you? The industry is demanding an ETF product. Look at what happened with Grayscale. It was trading at premium, and now it is trading at a discount. Why is that? Because all the inefficiencies in that product, where you're locked in for 6 months, when you're paying 2% fees, all those inefficiencies are now being solved by ETFs. And that's why Grayscale is now trading net negative, about almost at 15 to 20% of negative to the Bitcoin NAV. So overall, I think the ETF industry is exploding. I can't say what's happening in DC, but I'm sure regulators are watching. And my experience tells me the U.S. government never wants to stay behind when it comes to the competition. So my own optimism has really grown up into this, and some news coming from like J.P. Morgan is starting a kind of like a basket or an offering a product that gives you exposure to companies who are investing in crypto. Morgan Stanley is listed as the authorized participants for one of the ETFs that was proposed. So the banks and then other entities, Fidelity just applied for an ETF. So I think it's just probably a matter of time. I'm very hopeful.
I like it. You're optimistic. Hopefully it's infectious and it spreads over there to the regulators as well. Because you're right, we have seen approvals in Canada and other adjacent areas here. So hopefully that starts to trickle down here into the U.S. We see a little bit of opening the gates there when it comes, because we all know that Bitcoin ETF really, as aggressive and as crazy as things have been in the beginning of this year, once we see that ETF approved here in the U.S., it's going to be a game changer. I think most people can agree on that. We can't let you go without talking about the hottest thing these days, which are, of course, NFTs. They've kind of just exploded onto the radar for most people who aren't that close to the space. This is a new phenomenon to them, and we've seen them already exploding with, digital art sales going up for 65 million. I saw something advertised this weekend. It was WrestleMania weekend, and I think WWE was selling NFTs of The Undertaker, and they were going from anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 each. So it seems like we've already reached peak NFT, KAPIL, and yet it's kind of a new thing, I think, to most of the listeners of this program. This is obviously a hot area of the space. I'm curious, you guys over there at CrossTower, what are your thoughts on this exploding NFT landscape, sir?
Yeah, I have to say, I'm really fortunate. We all at CrossTower are living through this amazing age of evolution. What this technology can do is just unbelievable. So, for some of your listeners, if I may break down what is an NFT, let's just kind of start there. It is essentially, in a simple way, of course, it stands for non-fungible token. These are digital blockchain tokens that represent ownership of a unique item. And that unique item could be a digital item or it could be a physical. On the physical side, you have real estate, art. On the digital side, it could be a JPEG image or music. Or it could even be a bottle of your precious Scotch that you love. Unlike a fungible asset like US dollar, stock, or Bitcoin that are interchangeable with each other, there is a uniqueness to this. So that's kind of like the high-level definition of what's NFT. What are we seeing in NFT world? You mentioned some examples. I think the big sort of kind of successes in the NBA Top Shot area where people can actually own basketball's greatest moments by owning an NFT of the NBA highlight. Another interesting use case is coming in digital games. So I have a 13-year-old. He's buying and selling different weapons of his video game or parts of his car. Imagine if you can actually acquire a part of a race car that no one else can have it. So there is a game, actually, F1 Delta game, where it's licensed by Formula One, where you can buy digital car parts, which are bought and sold by NFT within the game. So it's kind of just taking the video game into a completely different ball game. And then, of course, we all heard about this $69 million purchase of the Beeple art, which just tells that I think the market is starting, it's growing. Are there some elements of bubble? Probably. Is this going to be another ICO? I can't say, but each of those bubbles, .com, ICO, they have given us a new way to operate. What I like about NFT is, especially for some of the artists now, they can get paid every time a sale is made for their art, whether it's music, whether it's painting, whether it's digital art. The royalty fees can be cracked without any sort of kind of corruption in the system. So there's just so many potentials, and the market is there's lots to be seen in the NFT space. But we at CrossTower are actually actively looking at what type of NFT tokens we can list to allow trading into them, or is there any other way we can give our large investors exposure into so they can invest in this asset class. But there's just so much. We're having fun. Let's just put it that way.
It is fun. Speaking of fun, we all want to know, Kapil, how many Undertaker NFTs did you buy this weekend during WrestleMania, sir? Inquiring minds want to know.
Not to be disclosed.
And you know you're bidding on those $100,000 ones. That sounds like something you would like. Well, Kapil, I could talk to you forever, but unfortunately we have to keep on rolling with the program. But before we roll out of the crypto hot seat, we like to leave our audience wanting more. So if you have any interesting hints, any interesting teases, you kind of just gave us a few, but if you have any more you want to sprinkle in there about what people can look forward to coming from you and the team at CrossTower in the coming months, now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I always enjoy your show. I think your listeners are definitely one of the smart money advanced traders. We really want to encourage you to check us out on crosstower.com. If you have any suggestions, we're really bringing the Wall Street trade professionalism, technology to the crypto world. Anything that you want us to build, you want us to look at, we would love to hear more from you. crosstower.com. Thank you.
There you go. crosstower.com is the place to go to learn more. And Kapil, I'm glad we got a chance to catch up with you, and I look forward to seeing how all these new initiatives you talked about, how they all unfold in the marketplace, sir, in the coming months.
Thank you.
All right, now we have to keep on rolling. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, let's get to it, listeners. Time for the Bitcoin Breakdown. How many Undertaker NFTs did you buy this weekend? Hit us up. Let us know here as we break down the action in the world's leading digital asset. Of course, I'm talking about the big dog, Bitcoin. Coming into showtime, it was north of that 60K level. Yet again, you may have been worried a little bit over the course of the last week. So we had a bit of a sell-off, a little bit of some profit-taking coming in across the board. Most of the major assets got hit pretty aggressively, but now coming into showtime, they have regained their volume and their value from last week, if not more. And Bitcoin certainly in the more category. End of last show is right around 59,000. Coming into today's show is almost 60,100, about 60,094 or so, up about $1,100 from this time last week. We saw it get as high as about 61,000 recently. So again, nice little foray over the 60,000 handle, which some folks recently, given the sell-off last week, maybe thought that wouldn't be coming anytime soon, but back up over the 60K level again. Coming into the vol scene, remember, we've been talking for a while now how Bitcoin vol has kind of languished, and that's kind of the case again this week. On our last show, it was 71%. Guess what it is coming into today's show? 71%. We saw a little bit of a flurry of vol during that sell-off period. You might have thought the vol spiked up a bit, and it did. I wouldn't call it an explosion of volatility, though. It got up to about 77%. So it didn't even get back into the triple digits during the height of the sell-off there. So, and it was very short-lived. Came right back down to about 71% where we find ourselves today. So at least for the near term, Bitcoin vol can't really maintain a bid. It can catch a bid and then it kind of gives it back. I mean, kind of reminiscent of what gold vol was a few years ago, where it kind of languished at a certain level and it would catch a little bit of a bid, then it would drop right back down again to where it was. We'll see if Bitcoin is going to fall into that model. Obviously, a much higher structural level of vol. I think when gold was doing that, it was around a 14 or 12 vol. This is obviously a 70 vol, so much higher. But still, interesting to see that it seems to want to hang out in this low 70s range for a while. Is this going to be the vol for the near future? There's a lot of things on the horizon that would probably point to no, but I've been saying that for a little while now, and the vol is still staying in this mid to low 70s range. So at least for now, that's where we're hanging out from a Bitcoin vol perspective. Bitcoin 3020 SKEW coming into the last show is about 4, almost exactly. And today's show about 10. So a little bit of a change out there, a little bit more SKEW building in out there. Again, if you don't know what any of that means, check out some of our educational programs here on the network. Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook Radio. 2 great starters for all of you out there. In terms of the hourly open interest, I do love saying that. We can break down the open interest changes hour by hour here in the crypto world, which is so nice. Can't do that yet in Apple or Tesla options or SPY options yet. Got to wait once every 24 hours, of course. On our last show, it was about 173,000 contracts open. Come into today's show a little bit more, about 185,000. So it's ticked up a wee bit since our last show. In terms of the overall open interest, though, and from a notional perspective, again, looking at the notional value that's open across all of the major venues, that hasn't really changed that much. It was about 11 billion notional last show, about 11 billion this show, too, with the big dog DEREBIT still pretty much all of that, about 11 billion. Then you've got number 2 is bit.com, 485 million. Then you got OKEX coming in at number 3, actually, 363 million. Number 4, LedgerX, 354 million. And then CME bringing up the rear there, 268 million. So you add them all up together outside of DEREBIT, it's actually closer to 12 billion. But still, kind of similar numbers to what we saw this time last week. We kind of key off the big venue, which is DEREBIT, and how their OI notionally changes. So usually goes the rest of the business. Remember, March came off the board a couple of weeks ago, still trying to recapture some of that OI out there, even though we saw a bit of a tick up overall this week as well. Looking at the call OI, it was about 97,000 contracts open this week. So that's up about 5,000 from last week. So a little bit of a tick up on the call front, but much more of a tick up on the put front. I think a lot of this probably coming from the sell-off we saw last week. Puts ticked up to about 93,000. So we're almost, not quite there, but almost 1-to-1 calls versus puts out there, which if you've been following Bitcoin options for a while, you know that's kind of an aberrant scenario. Usually Bitcoin is predominantly call heavy. It's kind of like VIX and the volatility products in that sense. The use case is predominantly to the upside, particularly in the long term. But right now, from an OI perspective, it's almost neck and neck, calls versus puts out there. So read into that what you will. I mean, the recent sell-off out there, that could certainly provide some interest and some concern about hedging to the downside. We also are pretty much hitting new all-time highs almost every week out there. So if you're a little bit concerned about valuation, you want to get some hedging in, it's not exactly outside of the realm of reason to see puts ticking up. And again, puts up about 10,000 versus calls up about 5,000 this week. So puts starting to get up there, a few thousand away. It's spitting distance now. It's anyone's ball game out there, which is, again, an interesting development for Bitcoin options. Overall, volume-wise this week, like we said, the notional OI hasn't really changed that much, and it was a decently active week out there. Again, looking at the big dog, DEREBIT, they had 3 days right around 1 billion, and they had 1 day at about 900 million. So you add them all up, that adds up to a pretty active week. But net, and again, not a lot of change from an overall OI perspective. And of course, that's light when we saw some other hot days, like back, at the end of March 24th, we saw a $2 billion notional day over there on DEREBIT. We saw multiple days well north of $1 billion in mid-March, 1.4 billion, 1.2 billion, hit 1.7, 1.6 billion in the end of February. Didn't see anything like that this week. It was just steady volume of about 1 billion a day or pretty close to it most of the days out there. In terms of months, how things are lining up from a month perspective, April is the big dog out there in Bitcoin options right now with about 54,000 contracts open. That puts it up about 6,000 from last week. So folks are piling in to the front month. I have to imagine that also lines up with a lot of that put growth we've seen in the OI, a lot of near-term puts coming in April. June is behind it at 41,000 for number 2. Of course, if you add up all the weeklies in April gets ahead even more. It looks like there's about 20-odd thousand in the weeklies that expire next week. And then, of course, we have, looks like close to about 15,000 or so on the weeklies that expire on the 23rd. So there's a lot of OI aggregated there in April. But just on the end of month perspective, it's April number 1, 54,000. And then June bringing up number 2 with about 41,000. Crypto does love a quarterly, even though in Bitcoin they have shown a little bit more willingness to dive into front month as well. We'll see if when we get to ETH, if that's the case out there as well. I'm guessing no, June and quarterlies tend to dominate things in ETH land. Looking at the big strikes, number 1 size position in ETH options right now is the 50,000 strike. That's got about nearly 15,000 contracts open, about 14,800. That puts it up nearly 4,000 from last week, about 3,700, and good enough to take the number 1 spot. The number 2 strike, 40,000 strike. That's got about 13,300 contracts open. That one's actually down. It's down about 3,000 contracts from last week. Number 3, now we're getting into some of the more outlandish strikes. We got the 80,000 strike. That's got about 12,700 contracts open. That's actually up about 2,000 from our show last week. And again, we're at 60,000 now. So 80,000, as outlandish as it sounds, isn't that far away. We're closer right now to 80,000 than we are back to 30,000, which It sounds crazy to say out loud, but that's where we are right now. Then we got the 60,000 strike, which is, of course, the at-the-money strike right now. Number 4 with about 12,000 contracts open. And rounding out the top 5 there, we got the 56,000 strike with about 9,500 contracts. That's down about 500, so kind of pretty much unched from last week as well. So those are your top 5 sizable positions in Bitcoin options right now. Rolling on out to CME land, kind of a quiet week out there on the options front. 64 contracts is one of the busiest days out there. Again, we're kind of waiting for these new micros to come online. That'll probably really gin up this volume a bit. Futures, similar story. The busiest day was April 7th. Did some pretty decent volume that day, 15,300 contracts. The rest of the week, much lighter, 4,000, 5,000 contracts. So wasn't a rock'em sock'em robots week for crypto over there at CME. Same deal for BAKKT. The BAKKT volume bot reporting a whopping 873 contracts going up on their monthly futures over there at BAKKT. So again, that's down about 7% and a far cry from their recent high not that long ago, September of last year, 18,718. BAKKT has never really come close to that number ever again. As we keep on rolling into our next segment, it is time to explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe. This is indeed the portion of the show where we break down everything going on outside of the big dog, outside of Bitcoin, except for the top of the segment here where we break down the top 10 by market cap. Kind of hard to escape Bitcoin in that conversation. Let's get into it here. Number 10 this week, Chainlink, 13.7 billion. Remember, take these overall market caps with a pretty tasty grain of salt, but the rankings have a little bit of merit to them. Number 9, Litecoin, 16.3 billion. Number 8, Uniswap, 19.1 billion. Number 7 here, Polkadot, 37.5 billion. Number 6, Cardano, 41.5 billion. Number 5, Tether, about 44.5 billion. Number 4, our old friend XRP, rocketing onto the scene, 61.5 billion worth of market cap, reclaiming the number 4 spot. Number 3, though, Binance Coin, 89.5 billion. You know what number 2 is? It's ETH, 245 billion. Number 1, the big dog, Bitcoin, 1.1 trillion with a T. It still brings a smile to my face whenever I say that out there, listeners. Let's look at the second leading cryptocurrency out there. Of course, ETH, another good run for the ETH heads. Our last show was 2107. Coming into today's show, 2140. So up about 32, 33 handles from the last show. But more interestingly, it hit a new all-time high, I should say, of just shy of 2,200, 2199.87. Just in the past 24 hours out there. So it jumped 3%. And it's up about 6% over the course of the last 7 days or so out there. So a good run out here in ETH, even though it has given some of that back a little bit here today. But interesting stuff nonetheless. ETH continues to grow, continues to get a lot of interest. And let's see how that's translating from a vol and an OI perspective. Remember, you can find all this for yourselves, just like the Bitcoin action. Just go to Genesis Volatility. You can find them GVOL, GVOL.io. If you're trading these products, if you're even remotely interested in them, you got to go to Genesis Volatility, gvol.io, kick the tires and light the fires. Tell them we sent you. They'll be happy to talk to you over there. And let's look at the at the money vol first. The 1 hour at the money vol, it was about an 86% on our last show this week, 87.5, and not a huge variance in between, even when we had the sell off last week. ETH is a little bit more volatile than Bitcoin right now, and it's kind of staying that way. 30-20 SKEW last show, 15.6 this week, 14.25. So not a huge evolution in the SKEW, unlike what we saw in Bitcoin options. Volume-wise, it wasn't the most active week out there. The biggest day was Friday the 9th with about 197 million worth of notional going up on DEREBIT. Every other day was much less. That's a far cry from what we saw even on our last show, where we saw 225 million, or go a couple of shows back, February 23rd, we saw about nearly 400 million going up on DEREBIT. So nothing like that out here this week. We've seen many days well north of 200 million, getting north of 300 million. So nothing like that this week. Kind of a quiet week, despite the fact that we saw a little bit of action out there from a price perspective. Look at the overall net OI. Different story in ETH than it is in Bitcoin. Like we said, in Bitcoin, it's neck and neck right now, calls versus puts. Which one will win out? who knows? The puts have been growing week after week as we see multiple shocks to the system. And as Bitcoin continues to get more elevated from a price perspective, the puts become more and more popular. So far, at least, in ETH land is still predominantly calls. 775,000 calls open out there in ETH right now. It's up about 45,000, and 530,000 puts open right now. It's up about 4,000. So puts didn't gain that much this week. It was pretty much mostly the calls. Hour by hour open interest net, not a huge change from last week. It was about 1.24 million open. Remember, a lot of contracts out there in the ETH landscape, a little bit smaller contract as well. Today, about 1.28 million. So not a huge change from a net OI perspective. What we did see, like we just broke down, mostly on the call side of the fence. And when we're talking notional OI, similar story. It was about 3 billion last week, and it's about 3 billion this week as well, with, again, most of that coming on the DEREBIT side. Unlike Bitcoin, where there's a lot of other venues picking up the slack out there, it's pretty much all DEREBIT all the time from an ETH perspective. They have about 3 billion open on their platform. The next closest is OKEX with 151 million. Then they got bit.com with 100 million. Then it kind of just falls off from there. So it's really all Bitcoin, I should say all DEREBIT all the time when it comes to most of the OI in the ETH options realm. Let's break it down now by month. Let's see where the hot action is in ETH options. And it's still the quarterlies. It's still June. Number one, the big dog. 356,000 contracts open in June. It's up about 10,000. So not a huge change in June this week. Saw a little bit more love for April. That's our number two monthly position out there with about 267,000 contracts. That puts it up about 27,000 from last week. And then decent number three, 222,000. It's actually down about 3,000 from last show. So not a lot of action in Dece, a little bit of action in June, but April coming on strong. Still got a long way to go. It's got to get almost 100,000 to catch up to the number one, which is June. ETH still, it's mostly focused on the quarterlies out there. Let's look at it from a strike perspective where the large positions are. And we've been talking for a while about these extremely in the money strikes, and that continues to be the case. Actually growing a little bit this week. The 400 strike, still the big dog out there with about 63,000 contracts open. If you remember last week, it was 61,500. It's about 1,500 contracts on a strike that is, about 1,600, 1,700 handles in the money right now. So that's actually gaining in OI, which is strange, I think, to put it mildly. Number two position out there is the 320 strike, even more in the money. That has about 62,000 contracts open. That one's actually down a little bit. So that's good to see some pairing of these deep in the money positions. And then we've got the number three strike, the much more relevant, though still far in the money, far in the rearview mirror strike of 1,600. That has about 61,000 contracts open. That one's actually down about 12,000. So a lot of paper coming off the 1,600 strike, and some folks actually adding to the 400 strike this week in ETH. So read into that what you will, listeners. Strange strikes abound out here in ETH land. Speaking of good weeks out here, Ripple had an excellent week, up nearly 60 cents from where it was this time last week. Last week, it was already looking pretty good at 81 cents. Remember, for a long time, XRP had languished in that 20 to 40 cent range. And whenever it got much north of that, 65, 75, it seems like the sellers were coming out with aggression. These days, last week, of course, it was 85 cents. And coming into today's show, it was at $1.40. So breaking the $1 level. Haven't seen that in quite some time. Perhaps these SEC lingering concerns, perhaps they're finally behind XRP, or maybe it's just a case of the rising tides lifting all boats, finally catching up with XRP. XRP has kind of languished while the other major altcoin have kind of taken off and seen this huge crypto surge carry them away with it. XRP has had some headwinds that held it back. Maybe it's finally catching up. Either way, XRP having a good run, up quite a bit, almost 3x from where it was just a couple of weeks ago out there. So a good run for XRP. Bitcoin Cash, similar deal, not quite as aggressive, but it's up at least. Up 47.5 from last show. Bitcoin SV up about 11.5 from last show. And we can't leave without a little bit of Dogecoin love. Dogecoin up a whopping 0.013146 since our last show. And before we head out of here, let's go to some really quick crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Questions portion of the show where you guys and gals take the reins, your questions, your comments. I like this one. Brings a smile to my face from Albert. He wants to know, did you guys get some TUBBYCOIN? It's powered by hugs. He's, of course, referring to, if you missed it, listeners, it'll bring a smile to your face. Back on April 1st, I wonder why it came out on that day. The Teletubbies, remember them? They're back. And they're back in the crypto landscape. And they announced on April 1st, in response to the overwhelming global demand for cryptocurrencies, that they decided to launch TUBBYCOIN. They term it an innovative new cryptocurrency employing the groundbreaking, easy for me to say, power of hug tech. Developed at Wild Brain Labs, a secure research facility in Coachella Valley. TUBBYCOIN is a new virtual system that employs cutting-edge cryptographology to convey the inherent value of big hugs in the form of exchangeable TUBBYCOIN, quote, big hugs, quote. The tokens featuring Tinky Winky, Lala, Dipsy, my personal favorite, Poe. They say to mine TUBBYCOIN, all you have to do is share big hugs tokens on social media with anyone who needs a hug using the hashtag TUBBYCOIN. Then sit back and let hug tech do the rest. And this was obviously an April Fool's thing, but there was something nice behind it. They say the people behind it, Wild Brain, will be making a base donation of 5,000 Canadian to this charity called Kids Help Phone. I'm not familiar with it, but they say for every share and like, they're going to add to their donation up to $10,000. So it's not the biggest donation, but it's something. And it helps, of course, get Teletubbies back on the radar. I'm sure maybe they're going to probably try to relaunch the brand. What better way to do that than tying it in with the hottest thing on the planet right now, which is crypto. So to answer your question there, Albert, no, I did not get any TUBBYCOIN. Maybe I should. I wonder if it's too late to share it with the hashtag TUBBYCOIN, but maybe we'll do that just to get some big hugs, because who doesn't need some big hugs these days? All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode of the Crypto Rundown. I want to thank our guest, Mr. KAPIL RATHI from CrossTower. Check them out if you want to learn more about all the things they have going. We didn't even get into their credit card, all the other things they have cooking over there at CrossTower. Check them out for yourselves, crosstower.com, to learn more. And, of course, I want to thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, for listening live. Remember, if you're intrigued by all things crypto derivatives, check out Genesis Volatility over there, GVOL.io, easy way to kick the tires and light the fires. We'll see you back here throughout the rest of the week. Education Wednesday coming up, hot and heavy. Got interviews coming up. We got, of course, TWIFO this week in futures, options. Got episode 2 of the option block. Volatility views on Friday. Then it all kicks off again on Monday with another episode of the Crypto Rundown.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVOL, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CFI options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVOL Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.